I'm going to make more terrariums today. Up till now I've been using a camera battery and SD card that both last about 15 minutes, which is kind of inconvenient since the updates usually take me about 20 minutes to film. To fix this I bought 2 more batteries and a bigger memory card, and that came up a couple dollars short of what I needed to get free shipping, so I added this. It's a 5-gallon glass carboy. They're usually used in home brewing, but I'm going to use this to make a terrarium out of. The biggest containers that we've used so far are the 3/4 liter whiskey bottles. This carboy is about 25 times that volume. It's also a lot taller, so I think I can fit in a few plants that wouldn't fit in any of the smaller containers. In fact, this is probably large enough to put a little pond in, but for now we're not going to do that. It's tempting to change everything up every time, but then if we do, anything that goes really wrong or really right, it will be hard to tell why that happened. So no pond this time. I'm also going to make 2 out of these wine bottles. They're tinted glass. That's more than just cosmetic. The tinted glass keeps out a lot of the light. Most plants probably can't grow in here. Some of the mosses, algae, and lichens, though, might, so I'm going to put some reindeer moss and a couple of lichens that I found growing on the northeast side of a tree in my yard, and we'll see if they can survive in here. Honestly, these are mostly just an excuse to use up some of my excess moss and wine bottles, both of which I have too many. As for the carboy, we're going to try not to pack it too full at the beginning. But the plants I'm putting in here will fill it up eventually if they live long enough, and if there's enough mass in here for that. So we'll be putting in a couple inches of gravel false bottom, a couple more inches of yard soil, and then planting this lily turf grass, this garden ivy that's been growing in my yard, some more reindeer moss, 2 cucumber seeds that may or may not sprout, and perhaps a couple of spring onions from the yard. I am still sticking with the gravel false bottom, even though I'd like this to last for a longer amount of time, and sand would be better in the long run. That's because right now everything is shut down due to the coronavirus epidemic, so I don't want to go to the store and buy anything. I think I could. The hardware store is an essential business, but I feel like buying sand for my terrarium project isn't really what that's supposed to be about. So basically I'm using gravel just because that's what I already have on hand. The cucumbers, grass, and ivy are each probably capable of taking over this whole container on their own. The cucumbers normally need like 10 feet to expand into, or a trellis. So if these plants all survive, this is going to be a kind of a battle of the plants. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they cope with each other, but first they will have to all survive, which is kind of a fingers crossed situation given our track record so far. I'm also, for the first time, going to deliberately introduce some animals, about 24 of these pill bugs. I'm also going to throw in a few sticks and a small amount of compost for them to munch on while they wait for something, some plant in here to die. Otherwise, they won't have anything to eat in the meantime, and they'll probably starve before their food source really gets going. My hope is that this bigger container can support them in the long run. We've seen a couple turn up dead in the smaller terrariums, but there is more space and more food in here, so hopefully they'll have a fighting chance. I think that deliberately putting animals, however small and dumb, in here is a fairly substantial change, so I'm calling this Terrarium 2.0. The water levels we used in the 1.1 terrarium seem to have worked fairly well, so I'm using the same amount for this new terrarium. Since it's 25 times as voluminous, that means we need 25 times as much water, i.e. 25 tablespoons, or a little over a cup and a half. The wine bottles are getting a little bit more, 2 tablespoons, or about double the amount we used in 1.1. That's because I think the darker glass might impair evaporation in these, so maybe with more water we'll still be able to get enough in the air to support the lichens. Or maybe not. It is an experiment, so we'll wait and see. Since it was raining when I made these, the soil was already pretty damp. So I ended up deviating from the plan just a little bit. I only put 1 cup of water in the large terrarium instead of 1.5. The wine bottles don't have very much soil in them, however, so the fact that the soil was all damp didn't really matter as much. And for that reason, I put the full 2 tablespoons in as I originally planned to do. I sealed the 2 wine bottle terrariums with a bead of silicone sealant around the top and bottom of a cork. But for the 5-gallon carboy terrarium, I wanted to try something a little bit more elaborate and hopefully a little more thorough. But I also wanted to let it establish itself for a bit, so I didn't want to do that right away. Instead, I temporarily sealed it with this metal closet rod end cap and a little bit of electrical tape. We'll finish sealing it up in 2 more weeks, but that'll be another video. And that's all for now. Both of these terrariums are done and ready to go out in the backyard.